You go and mess up reading your intro again.
I have never messed it up in my life, Tavi. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Two Asian Blokes podcast, a podcast where we talk about Asian pop culture, films, TV shows, comic books, music, food, anime, anything that we're feeling at the time, really. My name is Dan with a H, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tavi.
Yeah, you got through it.
Flawless, Tavi.
There was a little bit of a nervous giggle at the end. A little bit of a nervous kind of like, should I end my life giggle kind of thing.
How the hell are you, Tavi?
Oh, well, at the time of recording this will be post the Eternals episode. And I had a bit of a resurgence of symptoms right after
recording that episode.
After recording Eternals. So
probably unrelated, right? It's not like talking about the Eternals made you sick, right?
No, I think I'm getting mostly better. Just been getting angry at Elden Ring.
It's good though, right? That game.
Yeah, it'll win Game of the Year easily. It's very hard, as per usual. When it comes to From Software games.
No, I don't think they're hard at all. I think they're easy.
We've had some history with the From Software games. We played some Dark Souls 3 together.
Yeah, back when we were in Japan, right?
Yeah.
That was my introduction to Dark Souls.
Was it? I thought I played some of the other ones with you, but I guess not.
No, like I hadn't played a Dark Souls game before Dark Souls 3.
Yeah. I remember you were getting owned in the swamp area because there's poison everywhere.
Too much fucking poison, man.
And then these beast things kept jumping on you, and I was just laughing in the background.
Do you remember trying to beat the Nameless King?
Yeah. We were having goes and goes. Like I think we were just hanging out and drinking.
Yeah.
And then we were just trying to beat the Nameless King.
No, there'd be a time where like I'd go to work and you'd have the day off. I'd come back from work and you're just sitting in the same position still trying to beat the Nameless King.
Yeah, man. I think it took me like a week to beat that motherfucker. I mean, probably even longer because I was playing it when I was in Oz.
Yeah.
And I just hit this wall trying to beat the Nameless King. And like this fucking prick. Because he's got like 2 fucking stages where he's on his dragon.
Yeah.
And then once you kill him on the dragon, then he's got his Nameless, which is like significantly harder. Like,
yeah, when he gets off the dragon, yeah.
Yeah, I'd mastered the dragon. Like I could beat him on the dragon without taking a hit. But I just could not get a read on him when he was just like normal.
I mean, I think that's the point of those games is like to play them until you know you can memorize every move that the boss makes at every stage. I guess it's kind of like Cuphead in a way. A lot of it has to do with muscle memory and just acting on pure reflex alone.
Yeah, we played for a bit of Cuphead, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
We still haven't finished it, yeah.
No, I don't think we got that far, to be honest.
No, we didn't. I was playing Cuphead maybe about a year ago again, and I got a bit further. And it's kind of almost easier on your own.
Oh, yeah, it probably is, yeah. It's one of those games, like in the same vein as Battletoads or something, it's a bit easier on your own because you kind of get in each other's way when you're playing as a team.
Yeah, I guess it scales the bosses a bit.
Yeah. I guess there's that mechanic in Cuphead where you can, like, save each other before you die. Yeah, but that's like really hard to do or really hard to pull off.
Cuphead was really fun. I enjoy these really difficult games.
I like the aesthetic as well. We should cover video games at some point. Well, I'm sure we will once we figure out how to get all the technical aspects working.
Once we get a bit of a budget increase to our episodes.
I mean, it's hard to do remotely is the thing, I think. I think that's the main barrier. If I was in Melbourne or if you were in Sydney, I think it would be a lot easier for us to pull off. But
yeah, we had better net as well.
Fucking Australia.
Yeah. Who needs fiber optics, you know? Just watch Foxtel. Yeah, just watch Foxtel. You know, you got all the entertainment there. You don't need to have this fast internet. You don't need to have 500 megabits per second, you know? But anyhow, Japanese Film Festival 2022.
We've been building up to this for a bit of time, right, Tavi?
Yeah. It was an online festival due to the whole COVID thing, and suitably, I watched all these movies under the influence of COVID. So
for people like you that can't be trusted to not go out and get sick.
So my memory of these films vary depending on how much I liked these films.
Yeah.
But overall, I did enjoy the festival, and I'm thankful that there's a platform that these films are able to be shown.
The good thing about it being online is that it was free. So I think a lot more accessible for a lot more people. And hopefully people did join in. I mean, you and I promoted it to the 30 or so followers that we have.
Yeah. But it's not a sponsored promotion either. So if anyone, if any of the organizers are listening, maybe hit us up next time.
Give us some money. Give us some of that sweet Japan film money. But I do hope people were able to participate. Because there were some good films in there. I didn't get to watch as many as I would have liked, just due to time constraints.
It's hard to watch movies. Surprisingly, you'd be like, "Oh, you sit there and watch stuff. Like, what are you complaining about?" I mean, like you were talking about watching them all. I was like, "Damn, man,
It was a bit overly ambitious there.
Well, which movies did you watch?
So I watched 5 altogether. I watched Bread of Happiness, Ito, Her Love Boils Bathwater, Masked Ward, and It's a Summer Film. Not in that order, but yeah.
Yeah, same. I watched Under the Open Sky, Aristocrats, Awake, Mio's Cookbook, Ito, and It's a Summer Film.
So I guess what we're going to do today, Tavi, is we're going to talk about these films that we've watched and our overall impression on the film festival in general. But we're not going to be spoiling any of these films, just in case you do want to watch them, I guess. If we do drop any spoilers or find it necessary to drop spoilers, we will give you fair warning. But I think in general, it'll be pretty spoiler-free talk, right?
I guess in that sense, do you want to give a brief overview of some of the films that you've watched? And we can go one by one, and I guess there's 2 that we have overlapped and seen together.
Sure.
Which we can probably compare the most.
So I guess I'll start with the one that I watched first. I don't know why I watched this first, but I watched Masked Ward first, which is a thriller set in a hospital, hence the title. So basically the premise is this doctor is covering a shift for his friend at a hospital that he's never worked in before. And right off the bat, the hospital is pretty mysterious. Like, it's a small kind of psychiatric hospital, but they also have a surgery room, but the surgery room is chained up for mysterious reasons. Like, the nurses and doctors there say that it's chained up because they don't use it, and it's kind of, it would be dangerous to keep it unlocked. But you kind of know on the offset that they're being a bit dodgy about it. So yeah, this young doctor, our main character, is kind of suspicious of all this. But then all of a sudden, like, their night is turned upside down when this criminal, armed robber, he kind of like invades their hospital, I guess, and with a patient that's been gunshot by him, and he forces them to, perform surgery on her to save her life at gunpoint, basically. So it kind of turns into this hostage situation where the criminal who's wearing a clown mask is keeping them in this hospital because he doesn't want the cops to find out where he is, and they're trying to stay out of his way, really, and not cause him to give them any trouble. But at the same time, this young doctor and the gunshot patient are trying to uncover the mystery behind the psychiatric hospital that they're in. There are a lot of moving parts in the film.
Sounds a little convoluted.
It's a lot simpler than I am. Than I'm making it sound. Like, at the end of the day, it's just a mysterious thriller. The tension arises from, like, the robber. He's, like, roaming around the hospital, and he's kind of, like, volatile character. So you don't really know when he's going to snap and, like, hurt somebody, really. Meanwhile, our main character is kind of trying to uncover this mystery that's being covered up by the people around him in this really, like, shady manner. So he's kind of sneaking around and doing his own detective work while trying to evade detection from this clown. So, yeah, it was a pretty interesting watch.
What were, like, the standout points in this? Was it, like, the plot, the acting?
Yeah, I think it was just the general intrigue of it was engaging, I'd say. The performances were fine. Like, they weren't really over the top, as I've come to expect from Japanese cinema. Anyway, they were somewhat subdued, so that kind of made the mystery a bit more intriguing in a way. I think generally it was the plot that was keeping me engaged for the most part. I just wanted to find out like what the hell was going on, really. There's a solid twist at the end. I think it all wraps up pretty neatly, and I think it came together pretty well. I wouldn't say it was like mind-blowing, but yeah, it was just a solid thriller.
The first film that I watched was Under the Open Sky. It's about an ex-Yakuza who is released from prison, and he tries to assimilate back into like normal life, but his criminal past and his bad temper kind of hold him back. So it's a pretty simple story. It's got Koji Yakusho, who is pretty popular Japanese actor. You would have seen him in a lot of stuff. He was the father, ex-detective in World of Kanoko, or the voice for the Boy and the Beast.
He's the main dude in 13 Assassins, right?
No, that's not him.
That's not him?
I'm pretty sure it's not him. I've seen him in a lot of work. I think I most remember him from this other movie called Cured. It's like an old, like a dark thriller on the same veins of Seven. But he does that kind of like angry character struggling with his temper pretty well. So his performance is pretty good in this movie. And I guess most of the movie treads on to the theme of whether or not you can be forgiven for your past. Because, like, you know, for most of the movie, he's struggling just to get work because they won't accept convicts.
Sure.
But, yeah, there's a number of side characters that, like, try to help him out. And they're, like, really nice people. I think there's, like, a subplot where he tries to find his mother, who had abandoned him because he was like in the orphanage or something. And like, because when he left the orphanage, he grew into like a life of crime, and he murders someone trying to protect his wife. And then they're basically saying, oh no, what you did was too harsh. 30 years in prison. So like, yeah. And the prosecutor is a not very subtle, like, smarmy Japanese guy, as you can probably imagine.
I love it.
But most of this film is pretty downplayed. I enjoyed the performances a lot, but I think overall the conflict is a bit too soft for this kind of movie. And even using Koji, who plays Mikami, the actor is like capable of some really like powerful acting, and I think he was going for a bit of a quieter approach, but there were points in the movie where he would just go beat someone up, or like he's like wrestling with that fact. And I think that's most of the conflict, is like whether or not he's going to fall back into his old ways. But no, it's a pretty good film. I think this one was one of the more prolific films. This was distributed by Warner Brothers, so this one had a bit of a bigger budget than the other ones. But yeah, no, it's a fine film. I'd recommend it.
It seemed like it was one of the more high-profile films, and yeah, I do like the actor. I think I saw him in Memoirs of a Geisha.
Is he?
Pretty sure he plays Nobu in Memoirs of a Geisha, the guy.
I'm just going to double check this just to make sure you're not just being racist.
I swear it's him.
He's not in Memoirs of a Geisha. Oh no, he was in Memoirs of a Geisha. No,
he plays Nobu, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time I saw him, and yeah, I mean, he's good in that film.
Oh no, he was in 13 Assassins as well. You're right. Yeah, I'm being racist by not remembering him in these movies. So
I mean, that's a great film too.
Yeah, 13 Assassins is awesome.
I can see what you mean. He's got the range to kind of go ham a bit, but not in a cheesy way. Like I find like he's kind of in the same vein as Choi Min-sik, where like he has kind of made a name for himself by playing these characters that go hard. But yeah, this movie seemed like a kind of a more subtle or maybe more nuanced role.
He does it well. I think like just maybe emphasizing that dramatic aspect of it might have brought out just a bit more drama. But it's fine, because I do like the softly spoken Japanese films, but I think the story, while it's good, it's not as interesting as I've seen it done in some other films. But that's good. What's your next?
I'll talk about Her Love Boils Bathwater next, because it is a bit of a downer of a film, to be honest.
From looking at the poster, it just seemed like...
Yeah. When I looked at the poster...
Pretty happy film. Yeah.
When I saw the poster, I was like, I don't really want to watch this. It kind of looks like a porno cover. Just straight off the bat. Just something about the colors and the... You know what I mean? But like it's a decent film. It's a character drama. It's about a single mom. She's raising her teenage daughter when she's diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she learns that she only has a few months to live. Because of this, she kind of decides to reunite her family with her daughter's husband. Her daughter's father. So she tracks him down, and like he as well has a young daughter from another woman. So they kind of join their families together for the sake of the two kids, I guess, but also to kind of make use of the last few months that she has alive. But she doesn't tell her daughter immediately that she's dying. So she kind of wants to prepare her daughter for this inevitable fate of hers before she tells her. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. Like it's a pretty heartwarming film because they go through a lot together. And each character kind of has their own individual drama that plays out. Like the main character she's basically everybody's mom. She like whoever she meets, she like tries to fix their problems. Yeah, I guess the title comes from them opening up a center, so like a public bathhouse together.
Yeah.
But it's not really about the bathhouse. It's just more about this lady's last remaining months and how she chooses to spend them.
Sounds like a movie that I would probably like.
It's a nice film. It's really heartwarming, but at the same time, because you know how it's going to end, there's that inevitable fate of the main character looming over you as you watch this film. It kind of makes even the sweet moments of the film really tragic.
Well, that's kind of what, like, a lot of Japanese films have that sentiment, mono no aware, which is like the passing of things. Like a lot of the appreciation and the beauty of these stories is how short life is.
Yeah, they love that theme in Japanese cinema. That's
like the quintessential Japanese,
right? That's what cherry blossoms are all about, isn't it? It's just like the beauty and fleetingness of life.
Yeah, the ephemeral beauty of cherry blossoms. Yeah, no, it's a sentiment that I like in films as well. When you study it, you like see it in even some like Pixar films, like in Up. That sentiment is there during the
Up montage.
The montage in Belle as well. It's really tugging on them heartstrings. So it's a pretty common trope that are in Japanese films.
And I think this movie takes that theme and just goes hard with it. Like all the characters are pretty likable. Like you might not like them at first, but you grow to just love them eventually. Especially the dad. The dad is portrayed as this like loser that can do nothing right, really. Like he's a degenerate gambler and a bit of a deadbeat dad. But by the end of it, you're like, he's been through a lot as well. So it's the story is told through the lens of the mum, but in her interactions with all the characters, you grow to love each of the characters in their own, like, for your own reasons. So it's really effective in telling this kind of simple but heartfelt drama.
Yeah, cool. I'll check it out. The next film that I watched was Aristocrats. I'm going to struggle with this one because I watched this at like the peak of my COVID sickness. I really don't remember very much from this movie. I had to look up the fucking wiki to remember it.
Okay,
but
it's probably pretty good then, right?
It's got Kiko Mizuhara. For people who like her, she's pretty famous, right?
Yeah, she was in that Weekend music video.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, she was. Yeah. No, she's been in a bunch of stuff.
She was in that Nova commercial.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. If you were in Japan at the same time we were...
she was everywhere. I think she's a spokesman for Dyson, maybe, in Japan. Yeah, I always see her with that Dyson hair curling or hair iron thing. I don't know what it is, but looks like it does good stuff to hair.
Yeah. I mean, she's not even really the main character.
Okay.
But the story's about, like, two women. One who's, like, kind of born upper class, and she is struggling to find, like, a marriage because she had broken up with her boyfriend, and her family is pressuring her to get married. So it's a lot of that kind of arranged marriage kind of thing. I think her parents kind of put her up to a lot of dates to meet, like, different people. And she eventually, the main character, Hanako is her name, she eventually finds, like, a match, but then she finds out that her match has relations to Kiko Mizuhara's character, Miki. But, like, it's not all that it seems, really. And then, to be honest, most of this movie is a blur because there's not much conflict, because you do find out that Kiko Mizuhara and the so thought like husband who was cheating, they're not actually cheating, like they're just friends or whatever. So most of the conflict is like the kind of upper class girl who's still kind of not on the level. It's like kind of her trying to be accepted into this family, the pressure of that. Yeah, what can I say? The cinematography is pretty good in this movie.
How is Kiko's performance? Like, I've never actually seen her in a feature film, but she's been in some stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's fine. Like, this movie is very undramatic, but to a point where it's not particularly interesting. I'm really trying to struggle to say that I struggled to connect to this movie because I'm not a Japanese woman. So I think a lot of the issues deal with a lot of, like, burgeoning ideas of Japanese femininity and the struggles and pressures that they probably face. But I mean, I've read some books where I can relate to that story, but I think in this particular movie, because it's also about rich people as well, so it just kind of made me care. It kind of made me care a bit less.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one interesting scene where I think the main character or the protagonist, she goes to meet like the patriarch of the family, and there's a little bit of tension there. But then other than that, I don't really remember very much. It's not a bad movie. It's just it's very slow.
Well, it sounds like neither you or I is the target audience.
I guess not, but I think it's fine. Like, I think if you can relate to these issues or you can find some common ground in this, I think you'd be treated to like a pretty nice movie. It has rich people in it, but it doesn't like depict them as like, you know, the kind of Bling Empire type rich people. So I'd rather watch this over that.
Okay.
But yeah, there's not too much more I can really say about this movie. That it's fine.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll move on to a movie that I think is also just fine. Bread of Happiness is one that I watched. It's about a couple who own a bakery / cafe / restaurant named Money in Hokkaido. The story is a series of vignettes about the clientele that visit their shop. It's not just a restaurant, it's also like a bed and breakfast. The story is split into 4 based on the season that the story is set in. So each season follows a different couple of characters, but with the backdrop being the cafe. Each story is kind of like, heartfelt. Like, the first story is about this girl that she's going to go on a trip to Okinawa with her boyfriend, but at the last minute, her boyfriend cancels on her, so she goes to Hokkaido instead and goes to this bed and breakfast there, and she's kind of having this like kind of single lady moment where she's like, you know, screw men are the worst kind of thing. But then she like also meets this local who the cafe owners are friends with, and he's staying at the bed and breakfast as well. And they kind of develop a relationship that starts off rocky, but then they form a connection. That's the first story. The second story is about a girl who is growing up with her father because her parents became separated due to reasons, and it kind of talks about the daughter and the father's distant relationship or their relationship growing more distant, and the cafe owners try to get them to, like, you know, come back together. So it kind of follows that format, you know, like for each of the seasons there's a separate story, and each of the stories is resolved within its own arc. It's fine. It's pleasant to watch, I think. I found that it did drag a little bit. By the time I got to maybe like the second story, I was like, oh, I guess there are 2 more of these to go because of the seasons, right?
Anthology films, they're kind of hard to do because you have to make sure that you are recapturing the audience interest, because you're going through like this arc for each story. And if even one of them falters a bit, it's kind of like, all right, it's kind of boring. That kind of happens with these anthology movies sometimes, but for a really good anthology movie, like, it works really well. Like, going a little bit off topic, there's an Argentinian movie called Wild Tales, which does it really well.
I mean, I'll give the movie 1 point of credit. It's Hokkaido has never looked better. I mean, it looks so nice in this film.
So the cinematography is good?
Yeah, I just...
The way it's shot?
Yeah, I guess it must be the cinematography. It's just really pleasant. The colors are, like, very vibrant. One thing I really enjoy about Japan is the fact that it does have 4 seasons, and the 4 seasons are quite distinct from each other. In winter, it snows, so you've got that beautiful white backdrop. In spring, like, you've got the flowers and the cherry blossoms, so you get all those colors and those hues. In summer, it's all about green, like everything is really green, and you've got that sound of cicadas as well.
And typhoons and wet season.
I don't know if Hokkaido has a wet season, but and then autumn, of course, they've got the autumn foliage. So, like, I think this movie kind of makes use of those seasons really well.
Well, seasons in Japanese films is pretty common motif.
Okay.
Like, you'll see a lot of chapters or sections in films that will be labeled as spring or autumn. I think they've got a really strong connection to the seasons.
Yeah, I think they bring about a different mood, like, for every season. So that's a pretty good tool that they can use to kind of generate this different atmosphere, you know, without having to do much, really. But yeah, it's a good-looking film, just a bit boring for my taste.
That's all after all that.
And the main character as well is a bit, like, too cliche, I think. Yeah. She's a very, like, atypical Japanese lady. Like, she acts like she's in a commercial for something at all times, you know.
I actually have that complaint with another one of the films.
Okay.
But I'll get into that.
But you know what I mean, yeah. Like, if there's a scene where she's drinking a coffee, she'll, like, take a sip of coffee, close her eyes and smile, and like, it's just very kind of cringy.
The next film I watched was a film called Awake, which is based on a true story. Well, the movie revolves around these 2 shogi players. Eiichi is basically in love with shogi as a kid, and he kind of, like, dedicates his life to it. But he can't beat this one dude, Riku, who's kind of like, just a pretty chill guy. But Eiichi, I think both of them, their conflict is that they both don't like to lose. Riku beats Eiichi in one of the, like, friendly competitions. This causes Eiichi to quit. And then he just, like, kind of continues on his life in kind of feeling shamed from being beaten by this guy. But through university, he comes across computer programming, and then he creates, like, an AI shogi software. So the conflict or the main tension that's building up to is like this kind of live match between Riku, who has become like a top shogi player, versus the AI. So it's kind of like this rivalry story, which is the stories that I kind of like, as I've mentioned before.
It sounds interesting. Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty entertaining movie. So this one, it's shot more in that kind of standard Hollywood style. Like, there's a lot of like movements of cameras. There's a lot more. It's a lot more dynamic in its movement.
Yeah.
So it does make it a lot easier to watch. The performances are fine. No one really goes over the top, which maybe would have been cool. Wouldn't mind a dash of prestige in there. Like, I think like the rivalry is interesting, but they're not really at each other's throats. It's all about like not wanting to lose.
Do you have to know anything about shogi to watch it?
For the most part, no. I don't know anything about shogi. I think the film does pretty well in conveying when a player is losing or when a player has the upper ground without you knowing too much, because there's a lot of like, oh yeah, you know, he used this maneuver and the pieces on this. I'm just like, I don't know.
So like Yu-Gi-Oh! Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Yu-Gi-Oh!
But do you get drawn into the tension even though you don't know?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that just comes from the way the story is told. Like the coloring is very like saturated. More like a Korean film.
Okay.
Rather than like the kind of muted paleted Japanese film. Yeah, and I think the message is kind of interesting, like losing gracefully over like, you know, being overly ambitious or that kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's a pretty entertaining watch. Like it was one of the easier films to watch. Yeah, no, I liked it. I'd definitely recommend it.
Sounds all right. Did it make you want to learn how to play shogi?
No, not really.
Yeah, it seems hard.
I'm pretty sure I went to play Elden Ring after I finished watching this movie.
All right, well, should we talk about a film that we both saw next?
I've still got one more film.
Okay.
I could just go through that one quickly.
Yeah, go for it. What is it?
The last film that I watched that you hadn't seen is a film called Mio's Cookbook.
Oh, yeah, okay, you did watch that, yeah.
Yeah, this one was probably my least favorite one.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure. I must have just lost myself in delirium, because I stopped and started this particular movie a lot. But from what I can gather from the story, what I can remember, it's set in the Edo period.
Yeah.
There's a like childhood of these two girls. One of them's name is Mio, and then the other one's Nao. And they get separated through like a great earthquake or tsunami that happened in that time. Okay. And they both lose their parents and they get separated. And then Mio finds herself in like a cooking house or like a restaurant. She eventually gets really good at cooking, and her cooking gets recognized by like people. And then there's this kind of rivalry between restaurants, like this kind of top elite restaurant where they kind of steal her recipe. That was actually probably the most interesting part of the movie. The first act of the movie is kind of just like her being a very quintessential Japanese girl, like apologizing a lot and being very softly spoken. Yeah, just like, you know, the kind of typical Japanese girl. She like makes this egg custard thing, and then I think the recipe gets stolen. And then I'm like, all right, this is pretty interesting. Like, you know, there could be this rivalry to be like the top chef.
Right. But
then like they like burn down her restaurant, and then it gets like okay. The tension gets higher. It's like, oh damn, man, that's fucking brutal. But then like they just make another one, and then she has like a friend or something that eats at the other restaurant, and he's kind of like a nobleman, and he basically says to the other chef, yeah, don't do that again. And the other guy's like, oh yeah, all right. Obviously, like in a probably a bit more of a threatening manner, but then that plot thread gets like resolved, and it's basically her trying to reach out to her friend now, who's become like a courtesan, and she like hears of her like cookings and whatnot. I think the story it's okay. It loses its focus, But I think the biggest issue I had with this movie is just the lack of like cooking porn, you know. There's not that much
Really?
cooking in this
Okay.
movie. I was surprised because I wanted to watch this movie to see her like chop the ingredients and like they'll show like the finished dish, but they don't show much of the cooking.
Bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, there's this series of Japanese movies I watched a couple years back called Little Forest, and that is one of the best cooking movies I've ever seen. You can probably watch like a music video compilation of the main character from that film, like cooking food. And it just looks so damn good. The way that movie is shot is just so like hypnotizing.
Right.
So great to watch. This one is just like, yeah, the Edo's production design, it's good.
Yeah, I'm just looking at screenshots and it looks pretty decent.
Yeah, it's fine. There's some hammy acting. There's like this one dude, he's a novelist, and he's always really hard to impress. And his like most memorable quote is just him going, for the whole movie. But then he suddenly becomes sort of like an antagonist near the end. But it's kind of it's just a bit all over the place, to be honest.
Okay.
I'd be hard truth to say, like most of the time I was watching this movie, I was like, yeah, I just want to play Elden Ring. But yeah, like there's like a big emotional ending, but it had just like been lost on me completely.
Okay.
Which is a shame, because I was looking forward to watching this movie because I wanted to watch cooking.
Maybe you should have watched The God of Ramen instead. I feel like that would have had a lot of cooking in it.
Yeah, I heard that one's pretty good too. I just didn't. Yeah.
I think that movie actually has one of the instructors that I worked with in Japan in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard him say back in the day that he was in this movie, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to watch it, but now it's popped up again on my radar. So,
And you didn't
if
watch
that
it
is
again?
true, then good on you, man. I hope you're doing well.
So we want to get on to the first film.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about It's a Summer Film.
Okay, so It's a Summer Film is kind of like a coming-of-age story, yeah?
Yeah.
Based around the main character who has the nickname Barefoot. She and her group of friends, she is in the film club in her high school, but her film club has decided to make a romantic comedy for their entry into this year's school festival, which Barefoot, as a avid lover of samurai films.
Yeah, the Chambara movies.
Yeah, she kind of rejects the idea of romantic comedies. This character actually reminded me a lot of you.
Yeah, I saw you put it on the Instagram post.
Yeah.
This was actually the first movie that I watched because I was really intrigued by the premise. Because, yeah, it sounds like me, someone who doesn't like rom-coms and then wants to make... Like, I want to make movies, And
you want to make a movie that you're proud of, yeah? You want to make a movie on, like, of the subject matter that you're interested in. Yeah.
In Japanese schools, there's a big emphasis on clubs. And I always liked that idea. And I always like following that in films, especially, like, when it's usually a film club or a music club.
They do seem like a lot of fun, these clubs, yeah?
They do, yeah.
It is something that's kind of missing in the Australian high school experience a bit.
Because we'd just fucking break everything, man.
We can't have nice things.
No, we can't. It'd be like someone throwing scissors into a fan and then they would, like, shoot at someone and just like, oh, wow. So we can't. We can only have rugby and football where we can let loose our aggression.
Sure. But yeah, this film, the Barefoot, she decides to make her own samurai film. But the only reason she decides to do this is because she meets her perfect lead actor for the script that she has in mind. And it just so happens that this perfect lead actor that she's met just on happenstance is a time traveler from the future. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting twist, right?
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting it, to be honest.
I wasn't expecting it. The thing is, I usually like those kind of twists in movies. But, like, my overall opinion on this movie is that it's fine, but it does kind of it kind of drops the ball a bit after that twist. Because I thought it was quite interesting when he talks about, how films are basically a relic and nobody watches anything more than 5 seconds. That
also seems like something that you'd say as well. I bet that hit home for you.
It did. It's like, man, everyone's just, can only watch TikToks.
Yeah. I watched this film with my partner, and like when that line came up, when he was talking about that, I looked over at her and she was on her phone. And she looked at me like with this really guilty look on her face.
Yeah, there you go. Should feel guilty.
But no, you were saying that it kind of drops the ball a bit. Like, in what way do you think?
I just don't think that they really use the twist much to its full potential, really. It kind of just plays off normally. And, like, they talk about her being, like, already a successful director in the future. So it kind of loses the tension because you already know she's going to be successful. It kind of lost me a bit. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of just ends pretty quickly.
It's almost like the movie has two kind of halves to it. There's the side that's like just your standard kind of high school drama, and it's quite nice in its own right, this story of like this group of friends trying to make a film for their school festival. Yeah. Like I found those bits of character bonding like really fun to watch and just really pleasant. Even in that story there is a bit of drama because there's like love triangles going on potentially. There's like inadequacy, those kind of themes of inadequacy that you see a lot in high school dramas. But then it's got this other side to it where there's like this time traveling aspect to it. And I feel like you're right, like the two don't really mesh that well with each other. Like they almost feel like two separate films in a way.
Yeah, I think so. Like there's some stories like The Girl Who Leapt Through Time,
which this film references. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a really popular story in Japan. Like Mamoru Hosoda wasn't the one who created that story. I think it's based off a novel. But yeah, that movie does that kind of coming of age story well with the fantastical element to it, but also still grounded in somewhat realism. But then there's another film where you're talking about the the bonding friendship of these people making a movie. Linda is a really great movie about these girls in high school who start a band. They start like a punk rock band and they're trying to perform for a cover. So the main overarching plot is like they're trying to perform for the Festival Day concert.
Right.
And that's the same for this film. It's like it's all about showing the film to the audience at the end. But I think it's just like it just kind of gets mixed up in itself. And then it just doesn't have the payoff. And I was a bit disappointed. I really, really wanted to like this film because I really love the premise to it. I like the same things that you liked. It just kind of fell flat for me in the end.
I mean, there are a lot of good things in this film. There are a lot of things to like. But I feel like maybe a big issue is that the time traveling aspect isn't really integral to the plot. Yeah, I think that's the difference between something like The Girl That Leapt Through Time and this film, is that time traveling mechanics and that aspect is central to the plot of The Girl That Leapt Through Time.
Definitely.
Whereas in this film, it's almost like a side note.
It's kind of like, hey, I'm a time traveler. So sick, man.
Like I feel like they try to work it in, but it almost feels like an afterthought. And it certainly doesn't feel necessary. Yeah, I think the parts that I enjoyed in this film was just like the diverse characters, and like this group of people that coming together, this group of people that aren't really friends initially, like they don't have that many interactions with each other or history with each other, but then they come together towards this shared goal. That is always like a really nice thing to watch, especially when you have such fun characters as well. I think all the performances are pretty good. Like they're all really likable characters.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there is a bad performance in this movie. They're all pretty energetic. They were pretty likable.
I like the rivalry between Barefoot and I forget the character's name, but you know, the girl that's the director of the rom-com,
and everyone like loves her.
So I like that portrayal of that character, and I also like that she turns out to be a nice bloke at the end. You know, it's like that's always fun. Yeah, it's a really nice story. Probably just get rid of the time travel bit, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's move on to our last movie,
Ito.
Yeah, so this one, I had like no expectation from this movie.
I only watched it because you said it was good.
Yeah, I saw the poster and I was like, this is going to be a really dumb movie.
Again, it looks a bit like a porno.
It's the poster of her like holding like a shamisen in a maid costume and jumping up, and it's just like So it's basically about like a high school student who like lives with her father and grandma, like in Aomori Prefecture.
Yep.
And she's like this really introverted, shy girl. She plays shamisen, but doesn't play much since the death of her mother. She just basically wants some pocket money, so she decides to go work at a maid cafe. And like I didn't have any expectation for this movie, but I really liked this movie. Like, what I was very surprised by was the cinematography. The Aomori landscape looks fucking beautiful.
Have you ever been to Aomori?
No, I haven't.
Same.
But I've been to some like countryside areas in Japan.
Oh yeah, same vibe, right?
Yeah. So you and I think we went to like far north Chiba at some points.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of like, you know, sitting on those like express trains and just looking out the window and just seeing like these mountainous landscapes. And it was just awesome to look at. And just the framings of the characters just in their like habitats, like her in her room, everything is kind of meticulously placed. At the maid cafe, everything is just like draws your eyes to the characters really well. This movie had like no right to look this good from what I saw on the poster.
Yeah, I think the set design is really good. Like I was watching it and there were points where I think they were just in their house.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this house actually looks really lived in. It looks...
It does, yeah.
Like really authentic, you know? Like there are patches on the doors, because you know how like Japanese households, they have those kind of paper thin doors that are really easy to put holes in, and I imagine like a house that has been lived in for like 20 or so years will have like lots of these holes that have just been patched over, and like that, I think that is really conveyed well in this film. Like
definitely
everywhere they go looks legit, and it looks like people actually live there. Whether or not that's true, like they might have been filming in some dude's house, you know. But
maybe you never know. It looks like that.
Yeah, the maid cafe looks like a real maid cafe, you know.
I like the touch of the dialect that they use. It's hard to translate into the subtitles.
I have a criticism. If I have one criticism of this film, it's that it was subtitled really poorly.
The subtitles were kind of hard to read, but I kind of got it.
Do you think it was necessary to subtitle it that way, though?
I think they really wanted to emphasize like the hillbilly, I guess, aspect of the dialect.
But it doesn't play that big a role in the film, does it?
I think it does to her character. I think it's kind of showing this other side of Aomori people, I guess, because, you know, everything is like, you know, Kansai Ben and Kanto.
Sure.
Right? So I think what the subtitler was probably trying to convey is that they are speaking a different dialect. And I think, like you can hear it in the, like, I mean, our Japanese is not the best. Let's not like, you know, pretend that we're like N5,
I think
like
we're N
fucking,
right?
Wakari Mashita kind of shit, you know.
But you can tell, like,
you can tell. You can when you watch enough like Japanese films, as maybe you and I have watched, or like lived in Japan and listened to the dialects, you can tell that it's different. And I thought that was cool to hear like a country story.
I just don't know if it was necessary to make that clarification through the subtitles, you know? Like, because her character is an introvert, and she's kind of introverted because she has such a strong dialect, kind of, but not really as well. Like, she is just an introvert. So I don't know if it was all that necessary to push the whole dialect aspect of it. Like, at first I thought it was going to play a bigger role because, like, her dad is, like, some kind of linguistics professor or something. He has that little club that studies linguistics at the start of the film. But then it's not really developed in the rest of the film. So I just thought, it's a bit unnecessary to subtitle it like that. And it kind of took me out of the film a little bit.
I kind of just got used to it.
Yeah, I guess so.
What I found interesting in this movie is the two notions of subculture Japan as well as traditional Japan.
So we've got the shamisen and the maid cafe.
Because maid cafes are
For people that might not know what a maid cafe is, why don't you give us a quick breakdown of what a maid cafe is, Tavi?
A maid cafe is basically where young girls will dress up as French or British maids, according to this film, and they will serve their customers that they call master, basically. So you'll go to these cafes and then you'll order food and drinks, and then the maids will come and, they basically treat you like a master. They'll like bless cute beans on your food or whatever, that kind of thing. There is, I guess, a sexual connotation to a lot of these places. Because quite often the clientele are like old Japanese dudes who want to talk to pretty girls. So there's that kind of aspect of a maid cafe that is almost like a hostess bar.
Except that a lot of the staff are underage.
Which they kind of address in the film.
They do, yeah.
So it's interesting for them to talk about it because, like, the maid cafe depicted in this movie is probably the most wholesome maid cafe that I've ever seen.
Sure. I mean, it's a maid cafe in Aomori, which I think would be pretty unusual. Like, you do see a lot of them in Tokyo, especially in Akihabara. But for it to be in the countryside, I think, it probably is not as popular a thing to do. So it does seem more wholesome, certainly, than the one that we went to.
Yeah, not the ones that we went to. Like, you just walk in, it's just cigarette smokes and like balding old men trying to chat up girls.
It's an interesting time. If you're visiting Japan for the first time, I would recommend going to a maid cafe at least once.
Yeah.
But be prepared for an awkwardly weird time.
But like, let yourself have fun as well.
Yeah, just go with it.
Just go with the flow.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, because a lot of these girls that work there, they are just looking for a means to make money. It doesn't really mean much to them, except maybe near the end of the film. But they're like, and I've actually noticed that the message a lot in like Japanese films in general. It's like how much your worth is to your job. A lot of characters were like, I'll do anything for my job. It's kind of like in the zeitgeist of like Japanese minds, because how
I don't know. Like in this film, I feel like the connection was more to the team and the customers, I think, than to the job themselves.
That's what the film is making. It's the team and the customers, the job. Gotta do the job.
Yeah. But they're almost like a family, though, rather than like a group of workers.
No, trust me. Like a lot of Japanese movies, it's like I'm there for the family, the team, but it's ultimately. It's like to the job. So like the job becomes their family. So it's like, but like, it's, you can take with it what you will, but I've just kind of noticed that doesn't take away from the quality of this movie. It's just something I'm like, this movie makes me want to work. Makes me want to join the system. But that's all right.
Yeah.
Sometimes work is good.
No, I think your point of like the blending of the two worlds is really good as well. Like, a big part of the film is she has practiced shamisen with her grandma for a while, and that's kind of the connection she has to her deceased mum as well. But she kind of pushes against that a bit because she doesn't think it's cool or something, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that, and it's also, I think, there is kind of an underlying grief that connects her mother, the memories of her mother, and to shamisen. And it's like the theme of grief, coping with death, is pretty subtle in this movie. Like, I didn't expect that in this movie either, like those little underlying themes. And you do see, like, the dad who's trying to kind of put on a brave face, but, you know, he ends up, like, getting angry at points, and I think they have, like, a falling out at one point in the movie.
I mean, it's nothing like the drama of Belle, but I think in that way it's almost more effective a means to tell that story of just like this father and daughter duo, like dealing with the same kind of grief, kind of in a different way, like trying to be there for each other, but at the same time having this kind of individual pain from their shared loss.
And I just really liked a lot of the really, like, long takes of characters just talking to each other. Like, it's just the actors acting in their space, and the camera won't move very much, or there won't be an edit, you know. Especially the scene between Ito and the other maid, the
one that's the manga artist.
I just really enjoy just watching these two characters just be in the space and just, like, sharing their thoughts with each other.
I found the characters really consistent. It gets to a point where you like lose yourself in the characters. You don't even see it as performance anymore. You kind of just see one character interacting with another character as you believe they would in real life.
It's almost along the lines of Hirokazu Koreda movie. He does that kind of stuff really well. And that's kind of a lot from, like, the new Taiwanese wave of film back in, like, the early thousands. Just a lot of, like, lingering shots. I just was not expecting such a thoughtful movie. I was expecting, like, this really goofy movie where, like, they were gonna, like, overact constantly, and that her issue was that she was going to be clumsy and fall all over the place. That's what I was expecting. But when I watched it, I was like, oh, wow, this was quite good.
Sure. If I have another criticism with it, it would be with the movie poster.
Yeah, no, that I definitely agree with. The poster is horrible. I'm going to say that. It looks really cheap.
It looks like that. I don't know. It looks like an ad for, like, a Oktoberfest festival or something.
It doesn't really represent what the movie is, but I'm not sure if that's, like, the marketing, because it's like, I don't know, are they trying to appeal to people that want to watch, like, a goofy comedy, and then it's like, oh, well, it's actually a really thoughtful drama, which could go both ways. It's like, where's my goddamn comedy?
I mean, there are comedic elements to this film, but I definitely don't think it's the strength of the film.
No, it's not. But no, do check this movie out.
Yeah, good shamisen scenes as well. You reckon that actress plays a shamisen for real?
She probably trained.
Because, like, the scenes where she's playing shamisen, it doesn't even sound like they've... It sounds like they've kept the original sound. Like, you know? It looks really legit.
I think there's a lot of craft to this movie, and it's easily the best movie of the festival.
From what we've seen, Now, good watch. I'd recommend it too. What do you think about the festival overall, Tavi?
I think it was good. Discovering Ito was worth investing a lot of time into the festival. And it's just good to watch. Like, I guess these are kind of lesser known films that would have come out of Japan that otherwise would just not have registered on many people's scales. I mean, I seek a lot of these movies out, but, like, I'll often do, like, my own research and read and stuff before. But these they're just there, just watch them, and you can just discover, like, a really great gem like Ito, and then a really boring one like Mio's Cookbook.
But again, like taste is subjective as well. So that's another good thing about festivals is they do offer, like, a wide variety of films.
But it definitely is showcasing Japanese culture, actual Japanese culture, whether it's, like, the traditional aesthetically, or just the people that inhabit the spaces, like with Under the Open Sky, which is definitely a Japanese film, but it's not like overtly, you know, it's not like a fucking neon lit film, you know.
Yeah.
It's like real Japan. I think that's what is good about these film festivals. But yeah, what are your thoughts overall?
All the films that I watched were kind of all right, I'd say. But yeah, like you said, even if you are able to discover just one gem within them, I think it's definitely worth it. Like, I don't regret watching any of the films. I think I had a good time watching all of them, even though I gave A Bread of Happiness a bit of a hard time. Like, I do remember watching it in a fond way. You know,
I can't say I had the same enjoyment for all the movies, but that's also COVID as well. But
I mean, you've got Elden Ring to distract you, so yeah. I guess the bar was set a bit higher for you in terms of like keeping your engagement levels. But I think it was just a good way to kind of experience these films that that I definitely wouldn't have gone out of my way to look up or to watch.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm hoping next year it's a theater thing again, and just go and watch some films in the cinema.
Yeah, I don't know though. I don't know if I would have gone to to a theater to see.
You wouldn't have seen as many.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have gone, but like that's kind of my job, I guess. So,
Yeah, I don't know. Like the fact that it was online this year and the fact that it was free, I think it does a lot to draw in a more mainstream crowd, like myself, for example. I think, you know, they both have strengths and weaknesses. Definitely you get the more atmospheric experience when you're actually going to a cinema. But then you're also surrounded by cinema snobs like Tavi.
Like me, yeah. I reckon I would have enjoyed the films that I didn't like as much, probably more in the cinema.
Maybe,
there's something about the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But
some popcorn.
Let's not go into a rant on that. But yeah, no, I think we can wrap this one up. I think we're good.
All right, guys. Did you enjoy the Japanese Film Festival? What were your favorite movies? Are there any that Tavi and I missed that you would recommend? If you didn't catch it this time around, I'm sure they'll do it again at some point. So I guess we'll keep you posted if you're following us. But yeah, you know, they're around. These film festivals are not going away. Let us know your thoughts. You can get in touch with us at twoasianblokes@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook group to be part of the conversation, or you can follow us on Instagram at twoasianblokes if you want to see what we're up to. Thank you for listening as always, guys.
This was a surprisingly fun episode because we were worried that we didn't have that much to say.
Yeah, we went into it pretty blind, but
we didn't have our notes, just we didn't have the outline. But we've been. I'm looking at a timer, and we've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
So
have fun editing it though, Tom.
I shall for sure. Now I'd like to cover more of these festivals. I think there's a Taiwanese film festival or a Korean film festival that's coming up, so we should definitely cover that. But in the meantime, we're signing off.
All right, guys, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
See ya.